Good evening. It's 7 here in Poland. I'm not sure what time it is where you are, but I hope you guys have had a good day. So yeah, Michael, welcome. Villainous, great to see you. Great chatting with you. Lilo Main, good to see you. Thank you for being here. And Dr. Obvious, yep. Hope you're well. Thanks. Good to see you. Drive safely. And yeah, Artsy Fartsy, welcome. Gent Z, good to see you. Sandro, great speaking with you as well. Okay, yeah. So today we're going to continue speaking about nominalism, this philosophy, this insane philosophy, which it really doesn't deserve the title philosophy because it is an error. Welcome, Dr. Jonathan Gemmell. Good to see you. Great, welcome. I actually just met with a friend from New Zealand. He's South African, but his parents were from New Zealand. He has dual passports, and he's now moved to Poland. So yeah, he moved here about 2 months ago. Left New Zealand. Yeah, so this is an error. So we need to really call an error what it is, and we're obviously unpacking in detail why it's an error, right? So we're going to continue doing what I'm doing. I'm going to be examining the same philosophy from different angles to show you its irrationality. Andrew Martin, great to see you. Welcome. All right. Oh, by the way, so I've decided not to, this is me blurring the background. Let me just add that. This is what this looks like. And this is without. Do you guys like this look? You know, the clean, uncluttered. I also did not put on my studio light. So if I go here, that is my grandfather clock. You can see that's the grandfather clock there. I got that as a gift. So it's a 100-year-old clock. And this is one of my studio lights that I've got that I usually have. It is not on right now. So yeah, do you guys like the subdued lighting look? Okay, yeah, so let me close that. Just Janice, welcome. Okay, so let us dive in. And let me know if just this general sort of look appeals to you. Right. So at some point I'm going to be going over a slide and I'm going to be talking about Martin Luther and his disdain for Aristotle. This episode here in Theological Part 2, right, which is Theological, Scholasticism Part 2, Prophet Martin Luther, Reason's Clown. Thank you. Yeah, so that clock was a gift last year. It's like 100-year-old. They had it restored, which was crazy. So it was slightly damaged, and it was sent to some specialist who refurbished it, fixed up the case, and fixed the mechanism. I think it lasts up to 7 days, 7-day clock, I think. It's not the most accurate, but it's kind of cool. But although, if you're not used to tick-tock, it can get noisy. Okay, so yeah, this is the episode you would have to look at, Reason's Clown. And let me take that away for now. Right, we ended here last time. Right, so let's see how far we get in roughly an hour-ish. All right, thanks. So guys, yeah, so I ended off here with this slide. I briefly introduced William of Ockham, and of course, William of Ockham, I've been covering it much more in depth in my discussion here in Pius X. I discussed William of Ockham here, right? So this is my most recent episode of Modernism, right? Focusing on Pope Pius X, although it's not really a discussion of Pius X as such, right? It is a discussion of modernism and the heresies and the errors that he pointed out as all contributing factors to modernism. He identified these as the strands. So I'm going through these strands that he identified one by one in detail. All right. And I mentioned this nominalist world, right, which nominalism denies universals. The last point I ended was, let's imagine a nominalist world. You see a large group of people wearing hats. You cannot say that they share the characteristic of hat wearing because universals do not exist. You have to say these individuals are engaging in the act of hat wearing, but there is no shared attribute among them, which is why you now have the advent of the term vagina havers, because there's no such thing as women. That would be a universal. They're just individuals who happen to own a vajayjay. I hope that makes sense, because this is the insanity that we've reached. Let's continue. So, do they mean women? So let's have a look at this ad. I believe it's from Australia. No painful procedure required. Aloe vera is a long-lasting and patient-controlled, I believe this is a prophylactic, birth control. So there are 0 invasive procedures, because 0 is the number of procedures that vagina owners prefer. If there are any people who own a vagina, could you just drop a 1 in the chat so I can know who actually owns one? Let me know maybe where you bought it, what it costs, what the maintenance fees are, if there's like, if you have to, if there's a maintenance plan you can buy. I don't know if there's, who knows, if you guys can just clear that up for me, because I have no idea what a, wow. Thank you very much for that. That was fantastic for that contribution. If nihilism is the belief that nothing has intrinsic value, how would anyone know that nothing has such value in the first place if they were not judging said things by a standard of intrinsic value that supposedly doesn't exist? Yes, these things are self-refuting. They're irrational. So, wow, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very grateful for that. That's really kind. That's Breaker. Thank you. Or Breaker. All right. Yeah. So this is how language gets distorted. This is how language gets manipulated. Remember, these are your enemies. These are not your friends. These are your enemies. They don't use language to communicate. They use language to manipulate. Right? So thank you very much again. I much appreciate the comment. I mean, yes, this is what we're discussing. I've been discussing things like that. So, okay, so you vagina owner, because apparently this has now replaced the term front hole havers. Front hole havers. I don't know if that slips off the tongue very smoothly, right? And how about pregnant people, womb owners, birthing people, right? I mean, what does that make men? What do men become, So these are dehumanizing terms, right? So terms like vagina owner in place of woman dehumanizes women. It's a very disturbing example of cultural nominalism run amok, because now you have woman simply come down to parts. Yes, Just Janice and Dr. Gemmel. Yeah, this is the craziness. Yeah, it's a new function. You can do that. You can like the you can like a comment like that, and yeah. In the Hadith, it's a pleasant front passage. Also, the perfumed garden is what they call it as well. Yeah. So yeah, these are dehumanizing terms. These are not respectful. These do not confer dignity upon people. These debase women. Very simple. Yeah, men become useless once again. Good point, Michael. Yeah, let's continue. So this language reduces women to their biological parts rather than recognizing them as whole human beings. They are debasing your value. They're debasing you, just like the nihilist, the comment there. So this is a slippery slope, and nihilism is down at the bottom of the slope, as we discussed last week. Nihilism is where we end up. So using these kinds of crass terms are both demeaning and insulting. A penis owner. I wonder if I can trade it in for a larger model. What do you think? You think I can get it like, I'd like the 9-inch model this year, please. Do you think I can swap this one in? I mean, think about it. It's that ridiculous, if you'll excuse the crassness, but really, this is where we are, right? So this denies the significance of sex and gender. It doesn't celebrate people. It marginalizes them. It denies their dignity, their personhood. So the vast majority of vagina owners are women, or otherwise known as adult human females. In fact, not just the vast majority, as far as we know, 100% of them. So this is dishonest, and it is nonsense to not use biologically accurate terms. Right, so this also pushes an ideological agenda. The language is used to manipulate. The language is used to push an ideological agenda. So the motivation is a completely misguided attempt to be inclusive, right, of people who don't identify exclusively as women. So the intended end result is marginalizing women by denying them a distinct identity. That's how you can have 13-year-olds competing with 50-year-old... this is how you can have 50-year-old men identifying as a 13-year-old girl and then competing with them and taking their medals in swimming and other instances that we've discussed. Right, so this dehumanizes people, and once you dehumanize people, right, so the point is to dehumanize people, and the point is to destroy reality. In the future, I will be discussing Karl Marx and Satanism. I'll also be discussing the Freemasons and the Catholic Church. And when I discuss the Freemasons versus the Catholic Church, I have to talk about the Carbonari and the Alta Vendita. And when I speak about the Alta Vendita, I have to talk about Karl Marx. And when I talk about Karl Marx, I will have to talk about Satanism. And when I talk about Satanism, well, yeah, that's a very slippery slope. And you're going to see that Karl Marx, his intention was not to help people. His intention was not to uplift people. His intention was to cause misery. Karl Marx wanted to destroy everything that exists, and he wanted to cause misery. And we'll discuss that when I get to the Freemasons in the future. Okay, so this leads to a slippery slope of absurdity. If we cannot say women in reference to biological realities, we end up with convoluted phrases. We end up with mental gymnastics, right? Like people with vaginas and uteruses, as opposed to people with penises. I mean, what are those? No idea. Okay, so this does nothing to empower anyone, and it makes reasonable discourse nearly impossible. Right? So this embodies the misuse of language. It subverts, yes, right? And this language is used to control thought. This is mind control. Control language, you control thought. Control language, you control reality. So when we can't call things like vaginas, pregnancy, and menstruation what they are, because those words refer exclusively to women or the category of women, the universal called women, the end goal is to eliminate the idea of womanhood from reality. Yeah, like gender fluid, non-binary, cis-male type of language, exactly. Language is critical, language is powerful. This very dystopian manipulation of language, right, must be rejected. We have to stand for the truth. You must love the truth and you must speak the truth. As I have been telling people, let me just go back here. Okay, if I go to my home page, right, this is something that I put up recently. It's a phrase I've known for a long time. But when the truth is replaced by silence, the silence is a lie. You must not lie. Tell the truth. Speak the truth. The truth must be spoken. So we must reject this kind of language. We need to own the language. We need to make sure the language expresses the truth, right? So biological sex and gendered terms have meaning. There is power in naming things accurately, just as there is power and corruption in naming things falsely. So women must never be reduced to vagina owners or any other generic desexed label to satisfy ideological agendas or insane virtue signaling. Right? So nominalism has run amok in our society, in our day and age. Right? This is a very disturbing trend. We must call it out. We have to oppose it to preserve reason, to preserve rationality, to preserve clarity, to preserve truth. So this and other ads of this type, as we just saw, right, they cross an unacceptable line. We have to call it out. And if you have to vote with your wallet, vote with your wallet. Do that. Right? Cisgender may be the worst because it associates God-defined sexuality with the alphabet people degeneracy. Yes, this is language. So we need to learn how to fight this war using their tools, right? The tools are, we need to use these tools. These tools are effective. We need to learn to fight back. So Nicodemus says, yes, that is exactly what I've been combating. The recent popularization of using the labels draconian, nefarious. It is virtual ethnic cleansing. Yes, blame ancient Greeks for current behaviors. Yeah. Excellent. Right. So, for instance, questions for vagina owners. Maybe some of those of you who might identify as such. How long is the warranty on a new one? Is it measured in years or mileage? Do these things keep their resale value? Right? Is it a dealership sales distribution model or direct to consumer, or do you rent them? Right? Is there a lease option? So yeah, that's see, this is the kind of idiocy that you end up with when you speak of havers or owners, right? Nowadays they call them vagina havers. It's a 90-day return policy. What do you get when you return it? Do they refund you, or do you get a credit? Is there just a blank space where there used to be? This is stupid. Do you understand? This language is insanity. Exactly. It's gaslighting. It's designed. You must understand the language is designed to be ridiculous. Because if you think about it, you'll know it's stupid. It's also a test. Are you willing to accept the insanity and not say a word? Are you willing to shut up and go along? You become non-binary. So, Yeah, exactly. So all those questions are answered in a divorce court. Yeah, exactly. Um, so nominalism is also destructive. Wow, Breaker, thank you very much again for your donation. Thank you very much. So nominalism is also destructive to patriotism. You may have noticed in various newspaper reports, especially in the last month, that recruitment in armies in the Western world, like the UK, is down phenomenally. I mean, the army's like 30% down in recruitment. US Army is down 25-30% in recruitment. They cannot recruit, white men. They cannot recruit Native Americans. When I say native, I mean white Americans, not your. I'm not talking about Pocahontas and her friends, right? So they cannot recruit red-blooded American men because they've been marginalizing them and insulting them, right? So, and this effect comes out of nominalism. Let's have a look at how this affects. Remember, it affects religion, it affects logic, it affects politics, it affects law, it affects society. It corrodes everything it touches. It is corrosive. It must be rejected. So you see a group of firefighters battling a raging fire, right? You cannot say with nominalism that they have the characteristic of firefighting or the attribute of courage. You cannot say those are courageous men. You cannot say that those men are firefighters. They are merely random individuals engaging in acts of firefighting and individual but unrelated, random, arbitrary acts of courage, right? There's no universal firefightingness going on. There is no courageousness seen in the group. There is no patriotism within the group. These are individuals doing something that just happens to be similar to the guy next to them, right? So this is ridiculous, right? The firefighters are united by shared purpose, by shared skills, by shared hardship, by shared suffering, by shared loyalty, by shared values, by shared attributes. It's a shared identity based on commonality. Understand? So the whole point of this language and this philosophy is to destroy, to divide, right? Division, right? What they call diversity is not strength. It is division. Unity is strength. Diversity is division. So now we've seen for many years, and I noticed this when I was a kid. It used to bother me when I was in South Africa as a boy, right? You see this hyper-individualism that was rising in Hollywood, right? So hyper-individualism equals nominalism, right? You can be anything you want to be. You can be anything you put your mind to, right? You are unique. You're a unique individual. You're not like anyone else. There is no one like you. Bullshit. You have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, and 1 head like anyone else. Welcome, Ariel. Good to see you. Hello, Philip Schaffer. Good to see you. Yeah. So understand, hyper-individualism is ultimately a denial of shared commonalities, right? So you can have individual liberty. Yes, you can be unique. However, this is simply denial of commonalities. We have to understand our commonalities, right? Yeah, there are 8 billion people just like you. Exactly. You're unique, just like everyone else. So to deny the existence of these universals degrades the nobility of the profession of these soldiers, right? Their sacrifice. It denies the nobility of people who are firefighters. They risk their lives. I did some volunteer firefighting at a forest blaze. It was dangerous work. I mean, it's crazy, right? It implies there is nothing objectively real or praiseworthy about fighting fire or acting bravely. So if you remove the reward, the patriotism, the reward for being loyal to your country, then of course you're not going to be. Understand? So they claim these are all just arbitrary labels we slap onto random acts, and therefore it destroys patriotism, destroys loyalty, right? So a nominalist cannot consistently honor military sacrifice. On Memorial Day, you've seen recently these protests against military things. They want to tear down statues and so on, but these are simply to them isolated acts of individuals dying in combat, right? There is no shared attribute of bravery, of heroism, or love of country, because there is no universal love of country. There's just individuals who did something, God knows why, right? No universal values were defended or lost. It is corrosive to society. I hope I've made that point. You understand? So now we group these acts together, they say, out of habit, because we got nothing else to do. We'll just say these people are just, I don't know, fighting the Nazis because they had nothing else to do on a Sunday, right? So we give them the name military service. But these names, loyalty, honor, reflect nothing real. These are just random things you did because you felt like it today, right? So this is nominalism's premise that only particular physical objects have real being, and they act for purely reasons inside of their own heads. And we're going to explore this idea a little bit more. So we recognize that universals, morals, values, for us, these are all real, right? Moral truths are real truths, right? Fundamental, concrete to us, right? And in fact, more fundamental, more real than the concrete, the table, right? My mouse, they're more real. This is what really makes up the world, right? But these things, they shape human purpose and meaning, loyalty, compassion, right? Integrity, honor. These shape who we are. This gives us purpose. This gives us meaning. And they've destroyed these things. They're trying their best to ruin them, right? So by denying these things, nominalism drains the color. That's why everything is ugly. It destroys poetry. It destroys moral significance. Our acts are meaningless, right? So this philosophy is fit for robots and fit for relativists, right? Not for Christians who believe in absolute right and wrong, because they've also destroyed the universal good, which is God. Right, now, Plato versus Aristotle. Okay, so in Plato's view, Philip Schaffer, you're special, there's no one like you. Welcome to my neighborhood. I always wanted a neighbor just like you. Yeah, well, so in Plato's view, universals are separate. These are ideal entities that exist in a realm beyond physical reality. We've discussed this before, but there's a perfect chair somewhere in the ether, right? And the chairs that we make on Earth are just a pale shadow, a pale copy of the perfect chair. Whereas, of course, Aristotle has a slightly different idea, right? God imbues, although he doesn't believe in God, he didn't have access to revelation. But in terms of Christian view, as we would see this, we have this certain parallel with him, right? That this essence of chairness is in the chair. It's like the chair has a soul, right? It has a chair soul, right? So this perfection is within the essence, just like you have a soul. So Plato would say there's the perfect human, the perfect idea of the human, which is very, very Gnostic as well. Plato leads to a lot of Gnosticism. In the ether, you've got this fantastic sort of perfect human image, and we are just a pale reflection of that perfect image. Whereas Aristotle says, no, it's like you've been imbued with a soul, and every individual has the same soul. That essence is in all of us. So universals such as goodness or beauty are more real and more perfect than the individual objects or instances that embody them in the physical world. This is Plato. So goodness exists in this other realm. And it is perfect goodness, the right goodness. And here we've just got pale imitations, you see. Now, understand this abstraction, this is a problem because we are not as good as what is spiritual. See, the spirit is real. The spirit is perfect. We are these pale imitations. So, you know what, we may as well give up and stop trying. Do you understand? Whereas from the Aristotelian view, from the Christian view, that goodness is within you. You are part of that. You share in that. You partake in that, right? That nature. So do you understand? That's where we can get matter is evil, matter is imperfect, matter doesn't matter. Do you understand the distinction here, how that leads to that kind of thinking? So for example, a beautiful flower is an imperfect copy of the universal concept of beauty. So why be pretty? Because your soul is beautiful, your outside doesn't have to be. So for Aristotle, universals are not separate entities, but they exist within you, right? So rather than being perfect ideals that we strive for, but are unable because of the corruption of matter to achieve, these universals are in the characteristics and qualities of the individual. So the essence of humanness is not separate. It's not something that's up there as the monad in the pleroma and all that. The external ideal, right, which the Gnostics speak of, but this is found within you as an individual human being, right? You have individual worth and dignity. Very Christian idea. Do you understand? These are two different views, two completely separate and incompatible worldviews in a sense. Hopefully that makes that clear. So the implications are significant, right? Plato's perspective implies that the physical world is a shadow, an imperfect representation of the ideal realm of forms. Yes, the Holy Spirit. Exactly, you can think of it that way, correct. And this creates a dualistic separation between reality and appearance. You see, so your appearance is separate from your spiritual reality. I'm actually Beyonce. Can you tell? You know, notice I've got a much nicer 5 o'clock shadow than Beyonce. Have a look. See? So understand, so this Platonic idea leads to this separation. Whereas Aristotle believed that universals are found within the physical world. Concepts are present and connected to the concrete world. Okay? So Plato lays the groundwork for a metaphysical and epistemological dualism. Right? And this leads us to Gnosticism. Now, people will say Gnosticism existed, but yeah, sure, there were elements of the ideas of Gnosticism well prior to Gnosticism as we know it. But Gnosticism as we know it sort of is a second, third century phenomenon. Prior to that, there were elements of it. There were Sethian Gnostics. There were these ideas that really became organized in the second, third, fourth centuries. Right? Aristotle's approach is more aligned with the monistic. Okay, actually, this may be a typo. So Aristotle's idea is more aligned. Aristotle's idea, yeah, actually is more aligned with the monistic or Gnostic understanding of reality in a sense. But a lot of it can be applied also to the way Christians view the world, right? Although, so he's got but I could be wrong there. Actually, hold on. Ignore that sentence. I could have made a typo there. So let's skip that for a moment. Yeah, I'm the perfected Beyonce with a 5 o'clock shadow. Exactly. Ooh, yeah, definitely. You know, if you don't like 5 o'clock shadow, then I'm not the girl for you. So Aristotle's emphasis on immanent universals, right? This influences his approach to scientific inquiry, as he believed that knowledge could be obtained by examining individual objects and their inherent properties. So you partake, when you are created, you partake in the essence of reality, right? Of the God that made the universe, of the Spirit that made the universe. You are not isolated. You are not separate from it, right? You're not a pale, imperfect version of it. Okay, so a medieval debate in the 21st century. So now we've got this idea, this conflict from the Greek pagans, then shifts into the medieval era, and now it's in the 21st century. We're seeing the exact same argument come up again, right? So we're back to the pagan era. So in biology, consider the concept of species. How does this affect science? That's the question here. How does this affect and corrupt science, right? How does it corrode science and scientific thinking? So the debate on species, right? This is a common example in the debate between nominalists and realists. These are 15 breeds of cats. Okay, I don't think these are 15, but participation in the good point. So John of St. Thomas solved the problem Kant proposed, but 200 years earlier about reality and perception of reality. Yeah, Kant just talked a lot of poop. Okay, so here we've got cats. We can recognize that this guy and this guy are both cats. We recognize a catness about them, even though they're slightly different. We recognize that this guy and this guy are actually very similar. This guy and this guy have more in common than they have different. The external appearances don't count that much. There's something in essence about them that makes them cats. There's a catness about them, a feline nature about them. You can see they're not dogs, right? There's something about them beyond the biology, beyond external appearances. So realists argue that the species have a concrete existence, right, as distinct entities with shared characteristics. So these are distinct entities, but they've got certain shared cat ideas, like maybe they're genetics, right? They're cat DNA. They come from a common ancestor, if you will, or whatever, right? Nominalists will claim, Catherine M., welcome. So nominalists will claim that the concept of species is merely a random label, just a human construct. It's a social construct without any real existence. There's no such thing as a category of cats. There's no category of dogs. There's just things on 4 legs that you just randomly have separated into cats and dogs and lions and tigers and wolves for no reason, really. For example, let's take the idea of cats as a species. So a realist would argue there's a real essence or universal that defines what a cat is. And all specific instances of cats, these are all specific instances. A cat, another cat, a cat, another cat. These instances all share this cat essence. A nominalist would say that the label cat is just a random, arbitrary name, a social construct that you gave to that individual thing. It's just an individual thing. It's not part of a group. It's just a random individual thing. It's unique, right? So we give this to a group of individual animals that we perceive to have similar traits, that for some reason we think, oh, these things are similar. And okay, based on shared physical features, common behaviors, or genetic makeup. The nominalist would claim then that there is no inherent essence or shared attribute that all cats possess beyond our human classification. So the only thing that's binding them is because I said so. Right? Just because you said that those are cats, those are ginger cats, just because you said so, that's the only thing. Of course, they don't realize that the hypocrisy, because they say it isn't because they say so. You see, it's they say so. It's just words. Words don't mean anything except they're right and you're wrong because they say so. Their words are more important than your words. Do you understand? It is hypocrisy. It is just stupidity. So the pet breeder business is defunct. Yeah, I only need to nominate my moggy and the breeder. Yeah, exactly. I mean, for instance, this is my cat, and this is an award-winning cat, and I want my prize, please, because this is the world's best breed of cat, and I'm going to enroll this on Saturday into a cat contest, a cat beauty contest, and it's going to have to win, or you're a bigot for not liking my cat. You know, do you understand how stupid this is, right? Yeah. So yeah, this is exactly how stupid this is not a philosophy. This is an error. So that's where we get the term, it's a social construct. One of my cats identifies as a dog. I had a cat that grew up with dogs, and this cat thought he was a dog. He'd get involved in fights to protect the dogs. He was an amazing cat, but yeah. So genetics are irrelevant. Facts are irrelevant, right? It's a social construct. You understand where this idea comes from? It's a social construct. So realists will say that cats, right, that species have a concrete existence as distinct entities with shared characteristics, right? On the other hand, nominalists, they will say that the concept of species is just a label, right? A human construct with no underlying reality. So let's use the example of dogs again to illustrate this, okay? So please forgive me if I repeat certain things, but I really want to drive this home and try to make this a definitive resource to really explain these ideas in simple terms that hopefully will resonate with you, and at least one of these examples are one that you can use in discussions and arguments and debates and so on, right? Kevin, welcome. Mick, good to see you. So a realist says dogs have a shared essence, a universal that defines dogs, right? Whether it's a Chihuahua, a Great Dane, a Saint Bernard, they all possess common attributes: forelegs, fur, a particular reproductive system, and shared genetic traits. Nominalists, they disagree. They fight with us. They claim that the dogs is just a label. We apply them to individual animals, right, that exhibit certain physical traits and behaviors that we humans recognize as dog-like, and we make arbitrary categories. So they argue that there is no inherent essence, no shared attribute that defines all dogs. Now, all dogs have 4 legs. And they'll go, well, some dogs have 3 legs. You know, like that's a dog that had an accident. That's a medical condition, right? Catherine M says repetition is the only way I learn, so I appreciate repeats. Well, thank you. Yeah, because I try to define the same concept in different ways, because I find that sometimes one way doesn't define all of the contexts or situations you'll find yourself in. So I'm trying to sort of do it within legal context, within sports, within society, within science, within maths. I'm trying to sort of apply different of these examples so we really grasp this idea. So if we embrace this nominalist view, right, this is absurd. The examples, the scenarios become idiotic, right? So we would have to acknowledge that a Chihuahua and a Great Dane have nothing in common. We must literally believe that Chihuahuas and Great Danes have nothing in common beyond the label, the random, arbitrary, meaningless label that we've applied called dog. And that's where we're left. That's where we are. Lloyd, I'd like to push back in your characterization of nominalism. You seem to be discounting a conceptualistic nominalist. Look, I mean, you can then have a raxalated nominalist. You can have a widgetized nominalist because Lloyd, when you're speaking about nominalism, you're embarrassing the living shit out of me. Because you're making nominalism look fucking stupid, because it is. And therefore, I'm not one of those stupid nominalists. I'm an enlightened nominalist. I'm going to make up some other bullshit terms and bullshit words to separate myself from those fucking idiots, because I'm an idiot, but actually I've just been caught out, so I'm going to make up something to save myself embarrassment. Does that make sense? That's why we have raxalated, widgetized atheists. We have homunculized, raxalated, widgetect atheists, and then we've got Christian atheists, and we have Buddhist atheists, and we have spiritual atheists, and we have atheist atheists, and fuck it. Excuse my French here, but fuck that shit. So inbreeding is not possible, as you can nominate your siblings to be non-relative. Yeah, so it must be used in, yeah, exactly. So can you be... I'm not what I'm not. That was funny. Hold on, that was actually very funny. That's actually... exactly my point. I just got here, but can someone be a nominalist? Hysterical. That's funny. That's a good one. Good one. So, yeah. Yeah, so I am one of those stupid nominalists. I'm not a conceptualist. Your language is surprising. A Christian for recommending your channel. Sorry, man. Look, this stuff is chopping the sex organs off children as young as 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. This is what they are doing, and this is what they want to do. This is destroying countries. This is destroying the church. This is destroying our society, right? This thing is not a joke. We have to take this seriously. It is corrosive. It is destructive. I am no longer going to assume that everyone is acting in good faith. Understand, this is ideological warfare. This is no longer a matter of, well, if we just give them the facts, they'll change their minds. No, they see you as the enemy and they will destroy you. Okay, this stuff upsets me. When I see kids having their breasts removed, having their dangly bits and everything else removed, they are sterilizing children. It is evil. Understand? What do you want me to do? Okay, my job in the past was to make sure that evil people didn't murder other people. That was my job. I got paid to make sure that the people that are now being, please come into Germany, come into Europe, please, you guys are wonderful. No, these are people that are dangerous. My job was to make sure they didn't kill other people. So I'm afraid I do not view these as, well, we just have to be nice. No, this stuff is enabling death. Sorry. I'd also like to push back on the idea that nominalism is responsible for anything related to modern gender theory, unless you'd like was have me say that realism is responsible for slavery. That would be stupidity is also responsible for people saying dumb things, right? So thanks again, Breaker. Wouldn't an atheist just be a double negative and therefore just a theist? Actually, that's a fair point. That's fair enough, true enough. Right, so let me see, okay? So these people are also, now here's the thing. You see, this is what Gnostics would do, for instance, right? You have a dictionary definition. Now, I'm utilizing the standard definition of something. So according to that standard definition, right, using its tenets accurately, this is the logical conclusion. But because the conclusions that this would logically lead to are objectively stupid, would put that individual in clown world because they're that dumb, of course they're going to go, well, you know, I embrace all of this stuff that suits me, but all the really clown stuff, I separate myself. No. You either accept that this is where this leads, or you admit that you're now playing exactly like a Gnostic would, and like Protestants do. I like this part of Christianity, but I don't like that part. I'm rejecting this, and I'm accepting that. And I don't like that, and I've got my own little, just good. The Holy Spirit's talking to me, and actually, you know what? I'm going to reject the first half of the Gospel of, Paul, Romans 3. I don't like Romans 3. I'll do Romans. Understand? That's exactly where we're at. This is the logical conclusion of where this nonsense is going to take you. This is exactly where it leads. And of course, idiots who make errors, people who don't understand anything, are going to go all over the place. Understand? Error leads to diversity. Error leads to random chaos. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Error. Truth leads to one single outcome. Also, the church rejected this nonsense. The church looked at it and going, yeah, that's nonsense. Understand? So if Christians are embracing this and going, well, and trust me, I've had discussions with Protestants who embrace this stuff. If Protestants are telling me, well, actually, nominalism is actually not too bad, then I'm sorry, but you're not a Christian, you're a Gnostic. Let's move on. A nominalist, right? So they say there's no inherent essence or shared attribute that defines all dogs, right? So if we fully embrace this nominalist perspective, this is absurd, right? So moving on. In nominalism, there would be no shared attribute linking dogs despite distinct and common physical features, behaviors, and genetic makeup. That's called a cult, Lloyd. Thank you. That's well said. I apologize if my language offends you. You can unsubscribe, you can leave and go somewhere else. I don't care, right? This stuff, you know what? If this was an enemy that I could face on the battlefield, if this was an enemy that I could hunt down and deal with, right? Except this is not that kind of fight. This is not that kind of enemy, right? This is a battle of information. This is a battle of ideologies. This is a battle of morals. This is a battle of spirit. Understand? And this, we need the facts. We need the information. I do some rigorous work here, right? And yeah, we have to deal with it. This is the platform where we're going to deal with this. We have to speak the truth, right? I might make errors. I made a mistake earlier. As I said, I make typos all the time, right? But we have to fight against this. We have to come up with ideas that are grounded in reality. And these ideas that I know are grounded in history, are grounded in Christian history. This is grounded in the way that the early Christians understood the Bible. This is the way that they lived. This is the way that they thought. This is grounded in that philosophy. This is not grounded in stupid ideas made up by cultists. The cultural war, neurolinguistics, and imposing the artificial, pursuing procedures that mutilate the little ones. Yeah, I mean, this is destroying the lives of children, right? This is enabling pedophiles, quite bluntly. Have you read the pro-slavery argument? No, I have not. Look, what are we here to talk about? Do you want to talk about tennis, maybe Wimbledon, like last year's game, whatever? So, okay, so moving on, right? So, logically flawed claims of nominalism, right? So when nominalists, let me just go back. Yeah. So when nominalists ignore consistency across species, right? They make various flawed claims that undermine the principles of biological classification and scientific understanding. Catherine M., this channel is so refreshing, direct, frank, sometimes coarse language is the only way to shake the bondage of the sleeping. Sorry, I come from, people have tried to kill me, okay? I'm here because I wasn't just an intellectual, okay? I'm here because, yeah, I've had to dodge bullets. I've had to deal with dangerous situations. And I'm sorry if I'm not like an ivory tower intellectual, right? But people with bad ideas have tried to kill me. People with bad ideas have tried to harm people that my job was to protect. I've had to deal with evil face to face. I've had to go into danger. Now, that was different. I could grapple with that. That was in my face and I could deal with it. It was solid. It was real. I could get a hold of it. This is something that we all have to deal with this. We can't punch it in the face, no, but we have to be able to identify what it is. We have to identify how it lies, how it mixes, how it acts like a chameleon, and then we need to identify it and we need to call it out and we need to replace it with the truth. Is this a dog or isn't it? Yeah, exactly. It's a dog. Thank you, Breaker. Thank you very much again. So it's an interesting look at how realists were using Aristotle to justify slavery. Assume that you maintain that realism is not responsible. You know, Kevin, you are wasting my time. Okay, you are genuinely wasting my time right now. Right? So you are honestly, genuinely just, I've put you in timeout for 24 hours. Okay, so have a nice day. See you tomorrow. So when nominalists ignore consistency across species, they make flawed claims that undermine biology and science. Okay, let's continue. So one, there's a denial of shared characteristics, right? It depends on how the dog feels, artsy-fartsy. Yeah, what if the dog feels like a carrot on that day? What if the dog feels like a handbag? You know, what if the dog is vegan? I mean, do you get vegan dogs or vegan dog owners? So yeah, good point. So these people ignore similarities in living organisms within and between different species, right? Terms like mammal, bird, reptile are considered meaningless labels with no real connection to shared characteristics. Right, this undermines biology, as classification is important for organizing and studying living organisms. So this disrupts biology. Do you see how it corrodes science? It corrodes thinking. Look, there's some of you who are, look, there are many of you here in the channel, I believe, that are, that have graduated, right, university. Several of you have PhDs. Some of you are master's degrees, right? You've studied philosophy. Some of you have studied literature. Others of you have done mathematics and physics and biology. So, I mean, please let me know if I am talking absolute poop, right? Please do let me know if the things that I'm saying are complete garbage, right? Do let me know. Right? Michelle's feeling like a millionaire today, but the department stores don't believe. Yep. So, rejection of biological relationships. So, nominalists reject the idea of biological relationships and common ancestry. Right? So they argue that species are independent entities with no evolutionary connections. However, now evolution, that's a loaded word, so let's not do that right now, okay? So, however, this contradicts abundant evidence from scientific fields like comparative anatomy, genetics, and fossil records, which consistently demonstrate the interconnectedness of living organisms. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm a creationist and the Earth was made 23 minutes ago, okay? That's not the story. But nor am I going to say that evolution is 100% true, because Darwin was a quack, right? He was a psychopathic maniac, genocidal, eugenics, psychopathic maniac, as we've discovered. But the church actually does accept certain ideas, as it has a certain tolerance for evolution, right? Within a very narrow realm. But that's a discussion for another time. But also utilizing the terms of your standard academic institutions who are now pushing nominalism. They previously were pushing this. So now you've got this contradiction. They've done a complete 180 and about face on their own scientific ideas, which is insane, right? Multiple forms of anti-intellectual narratives are being injected, creating confusion. So yeah, so thanks. So nope, not got anything, but you're talking facts. So thank you, Francis Bull. I watched a little bit of your talk with before this. I watched like 20 minutes of your talk with Adam Seeker. So yeah. Right, so ignoring ecological roles, right? So nominalists ignore the roles and relationships between species and an ecosystem, right? They claim that interactions like predation, competition, and symbiosis are contextual, right? So in other words, your cat could eat lettuce, just given, if it was in a vegan environment. If your cat was in a vegan environment, do you know that your cat could become a vegan and like lettuce and cheese? It wouldn't need mice. Disgusting. Because, you see, you just have to put the cat into a vegan environment, and your cat would love birdseed. Cat would love. That's exactly what that comes down to. Okay, so disregarding genetic relatedness, they overlook genetics, XY, XX. They completely ignore that. Halal cat, exactly. So, right, they claim there is no genetic link that defines a species or connects different species, right? So molecular genetics gives us solid evidence of genetic similarities and differences, right? So by ignoring consistency across species, now look, this is merely disruption. Okay, if they can destroy consistency, they can disrupt everything. They can destroy everything. They create chaos. These people are bringing chaos, and remember, they want to burn everything down to build everything up. In other words, it's just destroy. Right? So they make extremely flawed claims that undermine the fundamental principles of science and biology. Right? The old "by my logic, you must necessarily agree with this wrong think," making you a bad person. Exactly. Right? Argument for emotion with extra steps. Thank you, Breaker. That's actually well stated. He said, we just put that up. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I also should mention, look, I mean, I used to deal with dangerous people. I'm not that patient. Under different conditions, I mean, I had to get ready for people to try and hurt me. So I'm not, I'm sure I can have an intellectual discussion or argument, but man, I was trained to harm things. Let's put it that way. So the old "by my logic, you must necessarily agree with this wrong think" bait, making you a bad person, non-argument from Kevin. Yeah. Thank you for that. My cat's a unicorn because she kills mice, moles, chipmunks. No vegan cat here. Yes, see, that's well said. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Dogs are made especially for man next to Jesus Christ. A dog is a man's best friend. Good point. Yeah. Okay, so Aquinas and the Imago Dei, and of course Martin Luther, the complete idiot. So Aquinas, he is influenced by Aristotle's philosophy, right? And Aristotle's philosophy, so he builds upon this concept of universals, and he introduces, so Aquinas builds upon the concept of universals, and he introduces the idea of the Imago Dei, or the image of God. Right? And according to Aquinas, the source of the universals lies in the divine intellect, the mind of God, and the will of God. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be doing a detailed dive very soon. After I do Luther, because I've got to finish this. I have to finish Pius X, and then I will do Martin Luther. And then I will do more on Gnosticism. We have to dive into Gnosticism. So I will be discussing Gnosticism and the early church. So I'll need to go back into Gnosticism and early Christianity. We need to understand Gnosticism as religion. So we'll probably go back to like the 2nd century or so. Right, and then we'll make comparison. Also within Luther, I'm going to be doing a lot of comparison between the early church, the church fathers, and looking at Luther's ideas and looking at how different these are. Actually, let me just do that again. So I'll be doing a lot of that stuff. Okay, and look for Gnosticism in the early church. We will do a lot of Gnosticism this year. I'll be doing many discussions like how Gnosticism changed and evolved. I've done some of that already. But we'll do more deep dives, and then of course I will do heresies. We'll do about 8 different heresies this year, if I, as time allows, because I've got 8 different heresies planned for this year. So universals, okay, so according to Aquinas, universals lies in the mind of God, right, and in the will of God, in God's knowledge, God's understanding. So in this sense, universals are not derived from the particulars. Nothing is unique that it makes up its own classification, okay? The classification is given to it by the mind of God who creates this thing, and this is part of this classification, part of a category, right? So everything's category, its classification, right, has an ultimate foundation in God's understanding, right? SC says, I love all these talks you give. It is flowing well with everything I'm reading and studying right now. It helps with clearing up confused thinking and how to give foundations to helping others. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Eugenics, Lloyd, always an interesting subject. Terrible though interesting. Yeah, I spoke about that, of course, with my Darwin series and a little bit on the Hitler series. I discussed those ideas. Okay, so Aquinas introduces the concept of the imago Dei, the image of God. Right, this refers to the belief that humans are created in the image of God. And of course, because it's a Catholic idea, it's pagan, right? We're made in the image of God. That must be a pagan idea because it's a Catholic idea. Crazy stuff, right? So this view suggests that humans possess inherent qualities, such as rationality, moral agency, and all of these things reflect the divine nature, because this is the nature of God. We are made in the image of God, therefore we reflect the nature of God, right? So this goes beyond the idea of just universals. So we don't just have universals now. We've got unique characteristics that make us distinct, right? And we share these characteristics because we inherit them from creation, and the Creator shared them to us, right? Because we are within the realm of his creation, therefore we share these characteristics. So universals pertain to shared concepts and shared principles. And the Imago Dei highlights the relationship between God and humanity. Except within the Christian worldview, we are emphasizing human dignity and human purpose. What is our purpose? To shine light in the dark places, to do good, to be good. Right? If we're made in the image of God, we should act in the image of God. That's the concept. Again, because it's Catholic, because Aquinas was a Catholic, this is clearly 1, evil, 2, pagan. At least I'm regularly told this. So let me know if this idea sounds evil and pagan because a Catholic said it. Just let me know. Aquinas saw our ultimate foundation in God's intellect, and humans possess unique characteristics that reflect divine nature, right? So while many argue about Luther being a nominalist, you'll find lots of discussion. No, Luther wasn't a nominalist. Luther wasn't insane. Yes, he was. His rejection of Aquinas and Aristotle and his embrace of Occam directly leads to nominalism, right? I've made that point. If you go into my lives where I've discussed this, right, go to my very first talk on nominalism, okay, woke, Transanity, and the corrosive thread of nominalism. I discuss William of Ockham here at length, okay? So I've discussed William of Ockham at length. Sorry, no, my bad. This episode that I did a couple of nights ago, I discussed William of Ockham at length. William of Ockham was insane, right? This guy was off the rails. This guy was nuts. And Martin Luther got a lot of his ideas from this guy, right? I discussed it already. So have a look at this episode if you want to learn about William of Ockham, where Martin Luther got his ideas. But William of Ockham was a guy who believed in nominalism. And as you can see, nominalism is insanity. So without the image of God, there would be no shared human morality. Anarchy would abound. Yes, and these people want to bring anarchy. It's denial of the image of God. So yes, Occam monad. Yes, Occam. Yeah. So did Gnosticism get anything right? Is it all perverse obfuscation to the core? Look, they would have to marry the lie to the truth, right? They would have to some degree, but they corrupt the language. So it very cleverly sounds like Christianity. So when I do Gnosticism in the early church, I'll try and dive into some of that. They try to mimic the language of Christianity, the language of the Bible. It's pseudo-biblical, right? It is, in fact, there are Gnostic services you can listen to on YouTube, right? Where you've got Gnostics at Gnostic churches giving Gnostic sermons. And it will take you 5 to 10 minutes of listening to the sermon before you realize it's not Christian. Seriously, man, I've listened and you're like, man, this sounds 100% normal, basic Christianity. And then suddenly they'll say something and you're like, huh, that was odd. And then they continue and you're like, wait. But it is sometimes extremely hard to tell. They use the same terms. They mean them differently, but it's so subtle. So, okay, so let me see. Yeah, Islam and Islamic countries. Okay, so let me see. What did I miss? Lying brings only temporary benefit to the liar. I don't recall the channel, but the chat didn't like our beliefs of God and religion. They are Gnostic. Yes, they're their own pope and no priest. But Martin Luther pushed that idea of them being their own church and their own pope. Let me see. Oh, maybe Kennedy Hall. I don't know. Depends. Okay, so let me see. Right. Okay, so solar fifis, and let's look at more of Martin Luther's bullshit. So Martin Luther despised Aristotle. Right. He considered Aristotle evil, even satanic. I've already shown you the episode on theological, right? Part 2. That's on scholasticism, episode 2, where I cover Martin Luther at length on that particular topic. Right? Luther rejected Aquinas, and he rejected scholastic methodology, meaning he rejected logic. Simon Magus was a Gnostic, but he's an early first century Gnostic, so kind of he's proto-Gnostic. Gnosticism, it seems to be, at least according to Dr. Michael Heiser, and I'm working through a lot of Dr. Michael Heiser's stuff right now, and I'll be working through some other material. It really formed as a proper theology, shall we say, 2nd, 3rd, 4th century. It settled down. So there were elements of it. It certainly was growing and developing, and it was rapidly, spreading. But it really kind of settled down in the 3rd century. Pardon me. Okay, so Luther embraced Occam, the nominalist. Right? I've already discussed nominalism with William of Ockham. As I said on Sunday, I discussed that. So go to that episode. Luther's disdain for Aristotle and his rejection of Aquinas and scholastic methodology pushed him towards Occam, right? So this emphasizes the importance of individual names in terms. You are all unique. You're all special, right? You are special. You can be anything you want to be. So Luther's criticism of scholastic reasoning and this emphasis on individual faith, this unique faith, your own personal uniqueness, you are special, right? The subjective interpretation all align with the core tenets of nominalism. So Aquinas and Aristotle's philosophy heavily relied on the use of reason, right? Logical argumentation, right? Methodology, right? And the belief in universal truths and universal essences. God is good, right? Therefore that is a universal. Whereas, remember, these people are saying there are no universals, then that means that you didn't get any goodness because you're an individual and God picked people at random. So understand it opens the door to this very corrosive thing that destroys theological ideas that were accepted from the beginning. So Luther emphasizes the primacy of individual faith, right? Fifis alone. So Luther emphasizes the primacy of individual faith. Why? Not universal. Now, of course, at some point, he's going to be embarrassed because the logic breaks down and it looks wrong. And this is too much of a severe break with tradition. So then he has to sort of align with traditional. So he's got to align the lie with the truth to some degree, or he's got to change the terminology so it sounds like it's traditional, but it's actually something else. Understand, this is where the deceit has to come in. So now you've got private revelation over reason and intellectual pursuits. So then you've got the criticism of scholastic reasoning. So he's critical of the scholastic method, right, which heavily relied on reason, logic, and deductive argumentation. Notice that fool that came in earlier, he was trying to distract and deflect. He was trying to take me off topic. That is sophistry, right? This would be called it's disputation, right? So what he was doing was disputation. Right, that is part of sophistry. Disputation is to argue. It's the science of arguing. It's the science of, and sophistry is the science of never being wrong. Right? So that was disputation. That was not logic. It sounds like logic, looks like logic, talks like logic. It's not logic, right? So nominalism is very skeptical towards the excessive reliance on reason and logic in understanding reality. Today, I had a discussion to dispute, to argue, exactly. Today, I had someone said, Lloyd was, all my Luther quotes. So on a different channel, Understanding Conspiracy, I did a talk with Paul Stubbs, and I quoted Luther. I showed a number of Luther quotes, and then someone said, Lloyd is probably using specious, unreliable, badly translated, potentially false quotes about Luther. And I was like, I actually have the entire set of Luther's works in English. Those are Luther's words taken from Luther's books. Do you have any evidence to prove to me that those translations by those scholars and the university level references that I use, these are proper, mainstream, highly credible, highly authentic, highly reliable university level references that are used? Show me that these translations are in any way unreliable. Show me evidence. Okay, show me that I made any of this up. And they said, I don't have to prove anything because the Holy Spirit has spoken to me and the Holy Spirit has told me that this is not true. You see, and I am guided by the Holy Spirit. You see, that's Gnosticism. That is throwing out reason and evidence. They had no evidence whatsoever. So one guy starts going, hold on, this is actually what he said. I'll show you. One guy replies to me. It was nuts. Let me just bring it up. So one guy talks to me and he goes, where is that quote? And he actually says this to me. He actually says this. You hurt kids 4 hours ago. You hurt kids. You hurt children. I mean, seriously, what does that have to do with me quoting Martin Luther saying stupid things? Okay? Like, what? Martin Luther said the following, and I'm like, I hurt kids. Like, good God. Do you understand this? Yeah, so they had nothing else to say. They couldn't say anything else that was of any value. While I'm here, let me go here. Bring you something else, okay? Community. This Martin Luther said, okay? Okay, so if I look at my sins, they are nothing when compared with those of Paul. So my sins as Martin Luther is nothing compared to those of Saint Paul, because Paul was sinful, but I'm Martin Luther. And according to the Spirit, according to the Holy Spirit, however, Paul is nothing when compared with me. This is Martin Luther in Luther's Works, volume 28, page 246. My bad, that's a typo. It's page 246. I'm spreading mischief in the land. Yeah, I'm hurting. That's a good point, Oratex. Yeah, I'm spreading mischief in the land. Yeah, but this is page 246. That's a typo there. So this is Martin Luther. He actually wrote this. So what do you guys think? Drop me a 1 in the chat if you think that Paul is nothing compared with Martin Luther. This is the first Protestant. These are the words of the first Protestant. Okay, this is the first Protestant. Protestants, this is the original Protestant. We need to be proud of this guy, because Paul, forget Paul, it's Martin now. You know, yeah. There are likely many myths about such well-known historical figures. From these sources, Martin Luther seems like a very arrogant person. Oh man, I haven't gotten started on Luther yet. This man deserves to be dragged through the mud, backwards through thorn bushes, for the things that he has said and written and done. This man, I can tell you now, when I've started reading, and I've read lots of stuff, the theologians that write about Luther are either badly wrong or just lying, right? So yeah, it bothers me that they somehow can't seem to find these kind of quotes. And I'm going to be doing a long, in-depth session on Luther in the near future. So, okay. So don't use your logic. Just, don't believe your lying eyes. So I'll go another 5 minutes. Yeah, the man was delusional. Exactly. The man was delusional, but he is the first Protestant. We need to understand it that way. So Luther and Nominalists believe that faith and religious experience, Gnosticism, your feelings, must take precedence over intellectual pursuits and philosophical systems. Welcome, White Rose. Yeah, so Paul was so humble too. No, Martin Luther was humble. What do you mean artsy-fartsy? Martin Luther was humble. He was so humble that he was, he was humble, and Paul was just wrong. Paul was wrong. We have Martin Luther now. What do you. So now you can be anything that you want to be. This is a very much nominalistic idea. You can be anything you want to be. Why? Because you're unique. You see, you are unique. That's a nominalist idea. That is a false ideology, because you can't be anything. You can't be a rainbow. You can be a train driver, but you can't be a rainbow, right? You can't be a woman if you're a man. Put your feelings over logic. SC, exactly that. So there's an emphasis on individual faith, and we're going to be discussing all of this. I'll be going into Martin Luther in depth. So Luther and nominalism, they both stress individual faith and personal connection with God. They would all say, Lloyd, I have a personal connection. The Holy Spirit talks to me, and I don't need any Bibles. I don't need no churches. The Holy Spirit, in fact, Jesus talks in my ear, right? That's it. And I'm right, because the voices. This is what I was dealing with in this conversation I was having with these people, right? So nominalism in particular takes a very subjective and highly individual approach to knowledge and faith. It's very personal, very private. Therefore, it rejects history, rejects facts, rejects tradition, rejects method, and it cannot prove anything, right? So Luther must have been better than Paul because he could abrogate books from the Bible. And he did. Everyone says he abrogated 4 books. No, he didn't abrogate 4. It's at least like 15 of them, right? Bible alone, except for these 15 books that are trash that have to go, because the Bible is sacred, but not these 15 books. These got to go. We'll discuss all that. So nominalists rejected objective existence for universal concepts, right? And they emphasize individual experiences. There's nothing universal, right? And so they reject objective existence for universals, right? And they emphasize individual experience and perceptions in the construction of knowledge. So you see, it's my knowledge, it's not just my truth. You understand where the term my truth comes from? It's my truth. I construct my own facts. I construct my own truth. I construct my own knowledge. Understand? James is an epistle of straw. Oh, that goes way beyond that. There's so much more to be said. You see, they'll offer that as a sacrifice to say, well, he was just saying. Martin Luther said a lot about the Bible, none of it nice. We'll talk about that in the future. They do become their own pope, and Martin Luther became a prophet. So what if Jesus does not speak to you? Therefore, are you bad? Does he not love those who don't hear him? Well, that's why we have John Calvin, because only some are going to go to heaven because Jesus doesn't like you. Jesus doesn't want you for a sunbeam. Jesus wants you to go to hell. Go to hell because that's what Jesus made you for. I'm special. I'm going to heaven. You understand how this opens the door to these kinds of false theologies, right? There is no universal, therefore there can be no universal salvation. This is applying these concepts of nominalism into theology. There is no universal salvation. Understand? That's how you get John Calvin, and you get this limited atonement, and most of you are going to go to hell. Yeah, it does lead people away from the truth. So Luther, throw Jimmy in the stove. Yeah, there's a lot more. Vipers in diapers. Yeah, that dude, that guy's an idiot too. He's the reason why many people have false ideas about Christianity and Catholic Church. Correct. He was a liar. Martin Luther lied. It's just incredible when you read this stuff. You're like, okay, let's finish this slide and I will call it a day. We'll do 1 or 2 more slides, right? Catherine M says, actually, this is a relief to learn the truth about these guys who derailed the entire church. Oh yeah, no, it was quite bad. I'm doing a lot of, when I do the Martin Luther thing, I'll be bringing in quotes from the oldest church fathers from like the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries where I have them available, just to provide a contrast and just to see, right? So Luther, he has no emphasis on subjective interpretation of scripture, right? He emphasizes private understanding and relationship with God. And then he realizes afterwards he's made a mistake, but it's too late. We'll get to that. And this is also aligns with nominalism's rejection of universal concepts and its emphasis on particularity, on individual perspectives, individual truth. This is how it hits the church, right? So both Luther and nominalism rejected the idea of a single objective truth that could be discerned and emphasized personal interpretation, personal experience. Both of these people I was chatting to earlier, the guy said, I'm hurting children. I'm like, how? By talking about Martin Luther like this? Right? They were both saying that I don't have experience. I haven't had that personal experience. They were both talking about they've had private experiences. They're Gnostics. So, final point here. Nominalism states that abstract and universal ideas do not exist. It says that our minds are unable to create general and abstract ideas. You cannot create a category called women. It's not possible. That's an illusion, right? It believes that concepts and classifications are based on specific individual objects. You saw 1,000 oranges and your brain somehow just randomly assigned them all into a box called oranges. Actually, it's 1,000 individual things that you've given a random label to, right? And everything is actually, these are not part of a category. They're not part of a group. They are unique and distinct. They're all different. They're all completely random, totally unique, although they're identical. Your brain is wrong. You are wrong. That's an illusion. And thank you very much. Did I get around to the atheist stream yet? I have done a lot of work on atheism. Breaker, if you go through my lives, let me just go down here. My Darwin series, that's 8 parts. I discuss atheism at length with Darwin. Okay, I go all the way back to about 2500 BC. And I have numerous talks on atheism. This is very interesting for anyone. Conspiracy Christianity and the Great Apostasy, that's very interesting. Confronting atheism, you'll find this very interesting because Thaddeus is really good on this topic. He really knows his stuff. But what you'll find interesting is if we go to Hitler, I speak about Hitler and atheism as well, right? My series on Hitler. But you're going to want to go here to these. Let me see here. Where's the stuff? Okay, here we go. If you want to talk about atheism, you have to go here. The atheist cult of reason, right? So the atheist cult of reason. So that will discuss atheism at length. I go into the history of modern atheism. I go back to about the 1750s, right about. Okay, so we discussed the last 250 years of atheism, how it started, it actually started as religion, right? Then you have to look at scientific Christianity, the religion of atheist socialism. So then this here, atheos, okay, without God, atheism defined. I go through about 85 definitions of atheism from academic sources. I go through numerous PhD level books and all the academic sources from Princeton, Harvard, Oxford, and so on. Okay, and then so this series here, atheos against God, okay, schmuckular humanism. I discuss atheism at length. So all of these series are detailed analyses of modern atheism. And yeah, and then of course that other fool that came on earlier can look at my talks on slavery as well. So yeah, I have talked about atheism at length, at huge length. Okay, moving on. Let me do one more slide and we call it a night. So Western realism, right, to end on a more positive note, so many streams, so little time. Yeah, I listen at 1.75 speed myself. So that's what I do. So the concerns of the Catholic Church at the time were relevant, but Martin Luther and others hijacked and perverted the movement. Yeah, no, I'm going to go into Luther at length. We're going to be doing a lot of work. It's the Hitler series I'm interested in. So the Hitler series you'll like, I think. It's one of my best, I believe. Okay, so Western realism, right, the worldview that we have today, the scientific worldview that we have, right, of realism is Catholic. We must understand that. So which is the factually more accurate philosophy that embraces proper logic and universals, right? And what do we call the opposite? See, typo, opposity. Okay, what is the opposite of nominalism? So philosophically speaking, belief in universals is more accurate, right? It is more logically coherent, right? It corresponds better to our natural intuitions about the world because we see categories, we see commonalities, right? We don't see pure individualism, right? Nominalism leads to very powerful conceptual difficulties, right? It's hard, it cannot describe things properly. It cannot explain how categories arise, how similarities arise, how commonalities occur across a group, consistency across species, consistency between different species, consistency between groups, right? It cannot explain that, right? It's unable to. It has to tie itself into pretzels to do so. Right? So this leads to conceptual difficulties and logical contradictions. It is obviously stupid. So the opposite of nominalism is realism, the view that universals have real objective existence. Right? There are varieties of realism. There is the Platonic realism, right? Universals exist in a separate realm of abstract objects apart from the physical world. That is effectively Gnosticism with a monad, if you want to look at it that way. That's where that ends up. That road ends up there. There's Aristotelian realism. Universals exist within particular objects in the natural world, and the thing's essence or form is a real feature, right? So there's a metaphysical reality to it that the external form, the objective material form, expresses. It expresses an internal metaphysical reality. Right? Moderate realism, and this is associated with Thomas Aquinas. This is a middle ground. Okay, universals that exist or pre-exist in the mind of God, right? And these are shared by objects through instantiation or by becoming real, by being made, by being born, when you create an instance of it, right? So that is the Aristotelian view that the Western world has adopted. So realism in its forms is logically and factually superior to nominalism. The first view, the Platonic one, is pagan, effectively. It's Gnostic, right? Practically, it's Neoplatonic, but it's got very much of a Gnostic flavor to it, right? Aristotelian realism is still somewhat pagan, but of course he operated without the benefit of revelation, without understanding God, although he did believe in some kind of spirit, right? A world spirit, cosmic spirit. Then you've got the Christian view, which aligns now with the Christian view, which takes that Aristotelian view and shapes it. Right? So realism is logically and factually superior. It recognizes that essences and universals are real features, not just random, arbitrary names and concepts we make in our brains, right? So this aligns with common sense and provides us with a very coherent, consistent, reliable metaphysical framework for natural philosophy, for ethics, for biology, for science, and other fields. So hopefully in this episode, I've explained how nominalism corrupts. I've shown previously how it corrupts law. It corrupts science. It corrupts reason. It corrupts everything it touches. It is not a valid idea. It is an error, but it is a corrosive error. But more than that, it is not a realistic view that we can discuss. It is an attack. When they say, well, they just want to be, just let them be. No, this is an attack. You give them an inch, they're going to take 10 miles. All right? So, guys, I think I'll pause here on slide 30. We'll start with page 31. This is 65 slides in total or something, 69 slides. So we're roughly halfway, just under halfway. Okay, so, guys, one question. Should I stream? Because I can either do an episode of Pius X, the next episode of Modernism tomorrow, or on, what is today? Tuesday. I can either stream tomorrow or I can stream on Thursday. What is your preference? It helps me if I take a day because it gives me a day to prepare the slides and to do additional research. So would you like me to stream tomorrow or would you like me to stream on Thursday? Thursday. Okay, Thursday. Yeah, my preference is Thursday, but yeah, Thursday it is. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, I've got extensive work on atheism. I've got huge volume of work on atheism. So from Schmuckler humanism, atheos, against God, I go through all of the definitions of atheism available in academia. And then of course I talk about socialism. Socialism is atheistic as well. It's an atheistic religion, right? So all of that is there. I speak extensively. And then if you go through my Hitler series and you go through my Darwin series, especially my Darwin series, you're going to discover a lot about atheism as well. Okay, so my Hitler series and my Darwin series. So if you go through my Darwin series, you're going to learn a lot about atheism. Okay, so my whole Darwin series is very much about atheism and the outcomes. So Thursday, so go to bed. Yeah, villainous. Okay, have a good night. Thanks for being here. Yeah. Okay, so guys, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. And yeah, perhaps I shouldn't be so, yeah, I don't know. I say things that, look, I mean, I tell you what I think, and this stuff angers me. It upsets me. It really upsets me. This is how I fight back against it, right? This is not an enemy that I can deal with. I'm not a soldier. I never was a soldier, right? But I had to go into the face of danger, and these aren't people that we can grab and deal with. These aren't things that we can grasp. This is a battle in your heart, in your mind, in the public space. This is a battle of words and ideas, battle for information, and yeah, if some ideas are just so bad, you just got to call them what they are. So guys, thank you very much. I appreciate that you enjoyed it. Over 90 of you at one point. That's fantastic. So yeah, okay, yeah. So guys, thank you very much. I will see you guys on Thursday, and hopefully everything is clear. Hopefully you can use this, and yeah, use the material. And thanks for the support, guys. We'll see you all. Good night. God bless.